Cambridge Radio is powered by volunteers who care about sharing the voices, stories and sounds of our city. But rising costs from rent to equipment and music licences mean we need your help. By this September, we need to raise enough money to secure our future in 2027. If Cambridge Radio has ever made you smile, kept you company, or helped you feel part of this city, please donate today. Visit cambridge.radio/support us.
Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cambridge Film Show, your fortnightly roundup to what's worth watching or possibly not worth watching around the Cambridge area. My name is Matt Taylor and I'm joined this week by my co-host Vicky Ayre.
Hello.
As well as Star Wars expert Stewart Paske.
Hello.
We've got a really varied week of film and streaming offerings to get stuck into, from a big franchise return to some smaller psychological drama, plus a couple of new streaming releases. We'll be talking the latest Star Wars offering, The Mandalorian and Grogu, relationship, horror, thriller, obsession, Steven Soderbergh's family drama, The Christophers, and mystery horror Passenger. On streaming side, we'll be covering, deep breath here, Prime Video's Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan: Ghost War, and Sacha Baron Cohen's latest Netflix offering, Ladies First. But first up, we're going to be talking about Obsession, which is directed by Curry Barker and follows Bear, a lonely music store worker who uses a mysterious one-wish willow to make his childhood friend fall deeply in love with him. What begins as an idealised romance quickly turns nightmarish as that love becomes uncontrollable, violent, and dangerously obsessive. Here's a trailer.
Have you ever actually, flirted with Nikki? If she means this much to you, to say, Nikki, I think we should grab a drink sometime.
You're the only person I get to really talk to.
I wish Nikki Freeman loved me more than anyone in the entire world.
It's weird how you two are dating all of a sudden.
I love you so much.
Jeez, what kind of clothes you put on her?
So that was a trailer for Obsession. There's a lot of hype for this one, and in my opinion, it's fully justified. So, Vicky, I'll come to you first. The film starts with this quite simple idea: what if you could make your crush love you back? But would you say this is a cautionary tale about desire, or is it just a standard horror movie with a bit of romance stylings thrown in?
It's certainly not standard. I felt this month in particular is very horror driven. This one I had no radar of.
Really? I thought there was so much hype for it.
I went in to watch Lee Cronen's The Mummy, and I just remember seeing the trailer and thinking literally nothing of it. But that's maybe because I'm not familiar with Curry Barker's work on YouTube, which seems to be a lot of the fan drive has went into this. And
he's so young as well to have such deep thoughts about relationships.
Very much so. And this
he's
thought,
26 years old.
This thought in particular is played off in a very, essentially a very successful narrative of what has become the horror movie of the year. I think it's done a kind of weapons roundup in such that nobody really expected it. Everyone was maybe a little bit excited, but it has become an incredible, I think, feat in directing. I don't think I've been this scared since I've watched Hereditary. And in saying so, my first reaction coming out of this film is that's the most scared I've ever been in a cinema physically. He's pulled off something very incredible, in which you've got actors who people aren't familiar with, certainly myself, maybe other people are, and they've created this insane, I can't really explain it, just it's almost as if the main actors are tenured in the way that they've pulled off, and that they've been 100 horror films in which they've created this dynamic which is so intoxicating when you're in it. It's like the classic monkey's paw storyline in which a wish will never go right if you word it incorrectly. It's almost a cautionary tale, and I've never been more excited for a horror film or to talk about one in so long. Yeah,
and it's one of those things, like, I understand that tension you're referencing, because as you learn more about exactly what effect this wish has had on his crush, and you sort of get these hints of exactly what has happened, and the true horror of the situation becomes clear before we finally get shown who the true victim of all this is. But I think with a film like this, it really has to have a central relationship that works. So did you feel that these two characters had a believable, sort of slightly awkward, initially, relationship that kind of turned into something more?
100%. I feel like at the very beginning, obviously you get introduced to Michael Johnston's character of Bear. You know,
such an odd name, isn't it?
Such an odd name, but maybe not. Maybe we're just not American enough, Matt. Maybe that's it. But you are in this kind of Midwestern American town. You're with these kind of early 20s characters. You're at the quiz night, something. They're all in these kind of, you know, retail jobs, and you get that kind of friendship come across within the first half an hour.
You get that fantastic cold open of Bear practicing his big speech.
100%, and you're seeing how much he really likes this girl and how truthful and how he really wants this relationship to work, but he's so nervous. And when he eventually gets the chance to confess and doesn't come through with it, he does, you know, the classic move of just, it's so innocent in the way that he makes the wish of just wanting to be with her, but then to see the danger that comes with that, and actually to see how his character never takes responsibility for what he is doing to Nikki, who is the forefront and the power behind, I think, the success of this, is so unfortunate, as he made a wish, and he kind of then closes his eyes to all the chaos that happens because of it. He doesn't care about Nikki throughout all of it.
But I did find I had quite a lot of sympathy for his character, because whilst he has found himself in an awful situation and he's in, you could say, a non-consensual relationship with someone who has no ability to consent to being with him, he didn't necessarily know or expect that was what was going to happen. And I found his kind of reaction to the ensuing horror very engaging and watchable, definitely.
And it's exactly what would happen if that maybe played out. He didn't expect it all, but what you don't get, I don't have sympathy knowing that he finds out what he has done to her. There is clues in the way that the storyline plays out that Nikki is, you know, in danger. She is not there. She is hidden somewhere in the back psychosis of the character that is absolutely driven in love with him. And he gets that, but he wanted to be in a relationship with her so much that it has just blinded him to the fact that he doesn't want to be in a relationship with this Nikki, but he doesn't care about the true reality of what his old Nikki is going through.
And it's almost like, you know, being in love with someone is such a fundamental part of your identity that he could never have been in love with the old Nikki, because
just the idea of her.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the true horror, is that you can't force someone to love you without them changing who they are. I feel like we have to shout out certainly Indy Navarrette's performance as Nikki. In my opinion, this is the most kind of impressed I've been with a horror performance probably since Micah Monroe in It Follows way back in the day.
No, she's literally a horror leading lady off the bat. And I think my big thing with horror, I love horror films so much, but I do struggle with jagged body movements. Maybe that's why Hereditary has gotten to me. I'm just not a big fan of, you know, ceiling crawlers or sudden whiplash of a back maybe. But essentially the way that she carefully curates her movement in this film is what drove the eeriness for me to personally set in, and which carried through right to the end. There's a slow movements, there's kind of a delay in speech, and it's just the way that the momentum builds into this is a monster unfurling, but it's not. It's a small woman that is, you know, that is essentially the enemy, but she's not the enemy herself. It is. I can't really grasp at how she's managed to capture it, but I feel like her main in interviews she's come out as that it's kind of like Pearl with, you know, with Mia Goth, but this has been taken to like scale 1,000 straight off the bat. I think I came out and said to everybody, this is purely the scariest thing I've seen, and I feel like you had a strong reaction to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if this is not troubling the top of our Cambridge Film Show Top 12 of the year, because I think everyone on the show, apart from one maybe, who's seen it has absolutely loved it. And seeing it in a packed cinema screen where everyone's reacting together, and as the sort of, I think if I'm being critical, and I think maybe we should be a little bit critical, it's like the final third does go a bit too far into the gore insanity, and there's one scene in particular I think is quite gratuitous, and maybe the film would have worked just as well without it, but it's such a shock when it comes that I was kind of just along for the ride by that point anyway.
It really doesn't let you off. It kind of gives you that small 10-second breather, and you're like, oh, maybe what we have been watching so far isn't that bad. Maybe it's just that bad because we're from the point of view of Bear, which you've kind of displayed from the start is a little bit neurotic, is a little bit he overthinks many things, but when the climatic gore scene does happen,
the point of no return,
the exact point of no return, you become Bear, in which he is silent. He is so shock driven that there's nothing that comes out, and he's like that in this kind of catatonic state until it comes to the kind of, you know, the monkey paws advice or the wishing willows advice of this will last, this will go on unless you end your life. And it's coming up to that decision of all he did was make a wish, and now he has to end his life to end it.
And how do you feel about not really going too much into the lore of how this works? And
I feel like it's just essentially you're just going, and he just went into a magic shop, he just picked it up, and then for all of this to actually unfold the way it did it's almost like a once-in-a-lifetime chance, you know. We see there's a lot of cohort to this as well. You have his friend Ian, played by Cooper Tomlinson, who is a star of Cory Barker's normal stuff on YouTube.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
They're the normal pairing, and so you see other wishes take place, and you see the practicality of it all. And what you do realise is that just Bear, the main character, just worded his wish so incorrectly. And it's almost as if he'd watched any horror film or had any context of doing that, you would never do so. I feel like in my head, I know wishes can go wrong if you do not word it correctly. And so you do kind of feel sorry, but it's almost as if he could have just wished for something else.
Yeah, he did kind of bring this on himself at the end of the day. But I guess we'll have to move on there. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for hours. But I think it's a very, very strong recommendation from us in the studio. Do go along and check out Obsession if there's still screenings about, because seeing it in a packed cinema screen has been one of the cinematic highlights of the year. So if you are interested, it is a certificate 18 for strong, and I stress strong, bloody violence, and it's showing at the Light and the Everyman.
Next up, we have what is the big highlight of the week. We have director Jon Favreau's Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu. The film brings us back to the fall of the evil empire, with Imperial warlords still scattered across the galaxy and the New Republic. We're joined by legendary bounty hunter the Mandalorian, played by Pedro Pascal, and his young apprentice Grogu. Here's the trailer.
We've all heard stories of the Mandalorian bounty hunter and a child.
I only hunt Imperial war criminals. I'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing another war.
Coming to you, Stu, as we so often do when the Star Wars galaxy is upon us, we have, as I mentioned, Jon Favreau's return to the Star Wars galaxy, and he has made a leap in translating his original 3-season-long TV series into a movie, and he's prioritised this over a 4th season. Does the story, as I'm assuming a Mandalorian watcher, fit into this kind of new compacted narrative?
I think it does. I think it's worked very, very well. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I knew going into this that if I wasn't going to enjoy this, then I would have been very, very cross. But I love Star Wars so much. I'm so emotionally invested in the entire universe. I had high hopes, and I think based on the previous 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, and also not discounting the Book of Boba Fett, which basically acted as The Mandalorian season 2.5, I think the scale of the seasons has increased with each successive season. So season 4 being bumped up to a full theatrical length movie, I think made perfect sense, and they've really done the character and the Star Wars universe justice yet again. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are kind of the dream team who have really just said to George Lucas, look, we grew up watching these movies. We know the universe inside and out. We've been creating, or certainly Dave Filoni's been writing Star Wars stories since the early 2000s when he was doing the animated series The Clone Wars. These guys have just nailed it, in my opinion. I think I had a really fun time watching this.
Obviously, I don't have the context of the series, but I always ask the age-old question. I guess I'll come to you, Matt, of... do you need to watch the series to have a narrative experience in watching this? I've always come to Stu when we enter the Marvel universe and I'm like, do we need all this context, or do you think you're brought up to speed pretty much straight away?
I think as long as you have some broad knowledge of Star Wars and what it is, and there's Rebels who are good, or the New Republic as they're now called, and Imperials who are bad, then I think you can jump into this. I mean, I've watched season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, but I haven't watched any of the other Star Wars content which Disney Plus have blessed us with. I thought this was fine. It felt quite televisual to me. I think it felt like a sort of compressed episode of a compressed series of a TV show. There were some good parts. I thought Jeremy Allen White as Rotter the Hutt, he gets the most sort of character development. I think Mandalorian and Grogu I knew about as much coming out as I did going in, which was that the Mandalorian is cool and has a helmet and blasters, and baby Grogu, not Baby Yoda, is kind of hard to control and cute. But Rotter the Hutt, Jeremy Allen White, he gets the sort of character development as Jabba the Hutt's son who's trying to break out from his dad's identity. And I thought that stuff worked quite well, and I thought the character design of Rotter as sort of what if Jabba the Hutt had a six-pack was very funny. So that was enjoyable. There were some nice set pieces. There's an extended sequence in a battle arena that's heavily modelled after the iconic board game that exists in the Millennium Falcon that's being played in the first Star Wars movie, which is a nice touch. You get Martin Scorsese turn up for a cool cameo as a sort of fast food van alien, which I got a few chuckles from. But I thought ultimately I think this would have been totally fine on Disney Plus, chopped up into 6 half-hour chunks, and you wouldn't necessarily have lost anything. And I feel like I came out without necessarily being desperate to see much more.
I feel like Jon Favreau made the 4th season in whole, but because of delays, but with the kind of love for this series, he really wanted to get that story out there into this film. But I feel like I haven't watched the original 3 seasons, but do you think there's anything more to be told within these characters, or do you think Jon Favreau has a new universe he wants to create within the galaxy?
I think one of the things, sort of, even the Hutts have a little throwaway line about the longevity of Grogu, who is the same species as Yoda. So Grogu could potentially live for hundreds of years in the Star Wars universe, which, as long as Disney and Lucasfilm and Favreau and anyone else who takes the mantle after they sort of either grow out of Star Wars or replace whatever, I think there is room for more Grogu stories as he gets older in the universe. I think that's just the great thing about Star Wars is that it is a well-established universe with so many characters and so many different routes to take. And I just hope that the upcoming movies, whether they do another trilogy or when we see Ryan Gosling in Star Wars Starfighter, which I think is next year, I really, really hope that they sort of can add to the depth of the Star Wars universe as it is, and give more for fans to sort of to gobble up in cinemas or on streamers.
Yeah, I think one aspect that I did find quite interesting was there was a little bit of a role reversal of the typical sort of Mandalorian-Grogu relationship, in that, in general, the Mandalorian is looking after Grogu, but within this movie, at one point, without going into too much details, the Mandalorian's having a bit of trouble with a giant dragon snake thing, and then we get to see Grogu take care of the Mandalorian for a bit, which was nice, and then wrapped up by saying, first the old look after the young, and then the young look after the old, and this is the way. And that stuff is all pretty cool.
That entire sequence as well in the film is an excellent display of the amount of effort they've put into practical effects and practical sets.
There seems to be some fun puppetry going on, especially with a squad of miniature aliens who sort of get brought into the squad at one point. So yeah, there's stuff to enjoy, and I think if you are a big Star Wars fan, then you will like it. But
I'm pretty sure it's in Disney's best interest to keep Grogu going as long as possible, because I've never seen a more merchandisable character that is just for all the ages.
They did need to capitalise on that more. I was amazed that there wasn't Baby Grogu merch as soon as The Mandalorian came out.
Yeah.
But I did see an at popcorn bucket yesterday at the light, to which Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu is age rated 12A and is currently showing at all Cambridge cinemas.
Okay, so next up we're going to be chatting about The Christophers, which is Steven Soderbergh's latest offering. It's a London set black comedy about a struggling artist, played by Michaela Cole, who's hired to secretly complete a reclusive painter, Ian McKellen, unfinished Christophers series so it can be sold after his death by his awful children, one of which is James Corden. But the plan unravels as she and the artist become entangled in a tense, increasingly ambiguous relationship over authenticity, legacy, and control of the work itself. Here's a trailer.
It's been a while since I interviewed an assistant. So, tell me about yourself. For now, I'll take I am a woman and I don't hate you, Julian.
Everybody knows what one original Julian Sklar is worth.
Studio. This way.
You said this was a restoration job. It's a forgery job.
No. All we're trying to get you to do is merely complete them.
By forging them?
By forging through them.
Okay, so you heard a little bit about the idea there. That scene sort of comes pretty early on in the movie where James Corden and Jessica Gunning from Baby Reindeer sort of recruit Michaela Cole's character to finish Ian McKellen, who's their dad's work, so that they can basically steal it and sell it after he's dead. So it's all about art and where does the value of art come from. So Vicky, is this a satire of the art world, or is it something a bit more personal than that?
I feel like Soderbergh has taken this project and he's created a set that definitely dives you into the art world straight away. There's the
house is fantastic.
The house is an incredible setting. You're in Ian McKellen's, 2 London townhouses, and the set design it literally transport you into what you would assume is an older artist's house. You have a life, a legacy. You have not exactly awards, but accreditations with stretched canvases, paint marks on the wall.
You can imagine there's a story behind every object in that house.
He's lived a life, and you enter into his home, and that's essentially where he stays, and that's all there is to the dwindling of his career, in which he hasn't worked in 30 years, when Michaela Cole comes to assist, obviously, with the narrative of finishing off his paintings.
Well, he doesn't know that to start with. She's there as his sort of assistant, but she has been hired by his children and her ex-classmate to do this, and you know that she has this hatred. You don't get to understand why. But I thought their relationship was well drawn, and you're desperate to learn why there's this hatred there.
There's just such and it doesn't unravel for the first, I would say, hour of the film, which for Soderbergh, when he's used to these compact 90 minutes, which I really appreciate him for. I think Black Bag was a strong hit with us all last year. He had, the Presence as well the year before. He's on a run with these kind of 90-minute dynamic films.
They're also different as well.
And to take a turn with this, for to be a slower relationship unraveling, but he still has, he's definitely casted correctly here. Who would have thought that two, British gems of Ian McKellen and Michaela Cole come together is so electric, and you want to listen to them, you want to hear them.
And you get lots of long, drawn out scenes where the camera sort of is almost a one-shot sequence where you just get to the sense of being in this house with these two characters. And I was incredibly impressed with Michaela Cole. I've not seen her in much. I gather she's quite famous for more comedic roles, whereas this had a lot of meaty drama to it as well.
Well, she's actually, I think her last TV show that she starred in, directed and created, May I Destroy You, was kind of she was like, this is almost like the end of her acting career. It was so personal to her that she thought she would take that off now and just be kind of behind the camera. But essentially her in this is so restrained as a character that you don't know what her angle is such. And as their dynamic kind of unfurls, you can tell that hatred was just admiration and love, and she's held herself back from truly divulging just how much she appreciated his work and her becoming an artist and her as a student. And for her to kind of turn her back on her original hirees of his children and the money that came with that, and to unfurl what is their diabolical plan of that they've already sold their father's long lost collection, they're just waiting him out. unfortunately death-wise, so they can really inherit and invest in their father's career, which I'm guessing he was never really a part of their childhood, into which there's resentment all around, is wonderful.
Ian McKellen's having fantastic fun playing a thoroughly abrasive character here.
And abrasive, and he's not far gone though. Like, he does have competency in this film. He does unfurl the plan quite early on, and her backstabbing narrative in his eyes of he pretty much clues on by just one Google search that she does not like him and that she's come there with bad intentions. And then to see the way that they play that out together is just very creative. And it is a satirical take on the art world, but it's also, as someone that went to art school, is very realistic. So I can 100% see the way that this film has come about, and I'm very glad it is out there at the minute.
I thought it was really interesting, and it feels very theatrical. You can imagine this being put on stage with these kind of long talky scenes of characters just kind of giving up their inner world to each other. And it's great to see just a little film like this getting a big screen cinematic release. And I'd say Soderbergh's done it again. How do you feel about this idea of finishing someone else's art? I mean, we sort of get it with fantasy series of books, sort of the Wheel of Time series, I believe, has been finished by Brandon Sanderson instead of the original author. Do you think it's possible to finish someone else's art, or is it too personal to ever really be?
I really do think it's too personal. I also think there's a beauty on its own. I've definitely seen, unfinished works by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's almost as if that is the end of their story, they didn't quite get around to it. But
what would give someone else the right to finish that?
No one, really, unless I feel like unless it needed to be, I feel like her job role is an art restorator, and I think that is such an honourable role to take on. She's already done it before, but the way that it kind of unravels in his speech is that you need to know the kind of emotional state that artists could have been in, and that only comes. You can't really create it. So essentially, there's no right to restore a person's work, but from this narrative you can see why it could happen or it could be done.
I just found it fascinating, these ideas being explored of how art doesn't necessarily have value because of how it intrinsically appears, but because of who has created it. So even if she can create something that looks identical to what he potentially would have done, it doesn't have value because it's not come from him.
It doesn't have the personality or the emotiveness behind it. But I mean, if the way that they want to plagiarize it, that it is him, it can always be believable.
There's that fantastic scene sort of towards the second half of the film where some paintings are discovered by the awful children, and from looking at them they don't know whether they have value because they don't know who painted them, whereas someone like me would think, well, surely if it looks nice, it has value.
Whereas
but I didn't go to art school.
And this was only, I feel like the real point of this was that they had already sold the paintings to a tech person that just wanted to hide them in the desert for tax reasons, into which I feel like a lot of the art world is currently like that. And so it does leave you with this kind of dynamic and narrative of things are, but that's very Soderbergh, and I'm glad that came through.
It's very Soderbergh. As hard to define as that is, it is very Soderbergh, and I think it's a recommendation from both of us. Okay, I think we're going to throw over to the ads there, but we'll be back shortly.
Cambridge Radio.
Amplify is the brand new local music show on Cambridge Radio, bringing you the best new and emerging talent from in and around Cambridge, with live performances and exclusive interviews with the artists shaping the local scene. Whether it's your first listen or your next favourite act, Amplify is where Cambridge's music comes to life. Amplify online whenever you want, and Wednesday at 7 on Cambridge Radio.
Choosing the right sixth form is a big decision. At Chesterton, we offer something a little different. It's a strong academic community with small classes and expert teaching that leads to outstanding results, and places at Oxbridge and other top universities. With Cambridge City on the doorstep, Chesterton sixth form students gain independence too. The choice is Chesterton. Find out more at choice.tela.org.uk. Part of the Eastern Alliance Multi-Academy Trust.
We are Cambridge.
Cambridge Radio. Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Welcome back. You're currently listening to the Cambridge Film Show on Cam Radio. Joining me in the studio today are Stewart Paske and Matt Taylor as we wade through those early summer film releases which have the fun job of giving us that little respite from the incoming heatwave this bank holiday. Next up, we have Amazon Prime streamer with Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, The Ghost War. Here's a trailer.
So you leave the CIA, you get yourself a nice civilian job.
Are you kidding me?
It's good to see you.
Whatever it is, I'm not doing it.
I just need you to meet a guy.
No.
God, I miss this.
Missed what? Being out in the field.
Don't look directly at me.
Sorry.
Might as well just touch your earpiece. Your friend sent you because he's scared. He's right to be.
So Amazon Prime have rebooted their successful 4-season-long TV series, which originally concluded back in 2023, but we still have John Krasinski once again at the helm as Jack Ryan. Matt, is this still a series that has a lot of life left in it? Or have Amazon pulled kind of a dependable kind of series from its grave just for the upcoming Father's Day rewatch?
I think this wasn't bad. I didn't hate it. I didn't watch all of the Jack Ryan show. I think I watched season 1 of it for the novelty, but it felt like something that I didn't necessarily need to come back to. I'm not sure I necessarily buy John Krasinski as a grizzled action hero, although I guess Jack Ryan's always meant to be a bit more cerebral than your typical action star. I think that if you like the TV show, I would assume you'd like this because it's very competently done. I guess Jack Ryan must have tried to retire at the end of season 4 because he's doing some sort of finance job, but he's rapidly brought back in. I think you heard a few of his protestations in the trailer, but they never really sound convincing. And very quickly he's off on a globe-trotting mission, which very quickly goes wrong. I think for me it felt very dated, like this kind of post 9/11, there's terrorists around every corner and things could blow up at any moment. I think a more kind of interesting modern take would be about disinformation and AI, but I guess that's not what this film is, and you shouldn't judge it against those criteria. For what it is, it's fine. I wasn't bored. I did like the musical score. I think there were some good kind of swelling orchestral beats as the squad were going on missions. I thought Sienna Miller was an excellent addition. I thought she added a good bit of grit to proceedings, and she had a very kind of good platonic relationship with Jack Ryan, which didn't dissolve into a typical Bond-esque romance. So yeah, I liked it to an extent, but it's not going to get me to go back and watch 4 seasons of Jack Ryan.
Coming to you, Stu, I think it's quite fair to say this is the second film in our lineup this week, which is a feature film. It's John Krasinski's first one as Jack Ryan, which is based on a TV show that has had a few successful seasons in the past. Now, this seems to be a familiar pattern. You know, we've definitely talked about Downton Abbey and recently Peaky Blinders. Do you think that there's money to be made and it's paying off in a way that the fans can enjoy, or do you think this is just a way that is just going to be the way to get the content out there faster so that it can keep developing that preying on, the fans kind of always watching this?
I think, so to use Star Wars as an example again, it's an example of they've used the series to do some world building. And then perhaps if the cynic and me were talking, then yes, they've found an opportunity. They found a character in a world that people like, and they're doing the same with Jack Ryan as well. But that's not to say I didn't thoroughly enjoy it. I've watched all 4 seasons of Jack Ryan and thoroughly enjoyed it. I think John Krasinski is a charming actor, and I think have him go from his sort of floppy-head, adorkable role in the US office to this is a nice contrast, and it shows that
he's done a few action films now. Like, did you watch Fountain of Youth?
I didn't see that. No.
Or 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi.
And he did one of the alien invasion ones.
He had a good beard in that.
Yeah, but no, I really, really have enjoyed him throughout this season. and throughout this movie, transitioning from TV to film talk.
Exactly that.
Yeah. It's also interesting to note as well. So this is in America, anyway, the American rating system, it's an R-rated, whereas the TV series it was only ever TVMA in America. So so they've really sort of lent into the sort of the stakes are a lot higher. It's a lot more violence.
It's not particularly gory though, is it?
Not gory, not like horror gory.
Felt like it could be a 12A to me.
It's like military violence, because it's a sort of a spy thriller, so it's a bit more sort of James Bond level of violence rather than a horror movie. But I think the production value in some of those sort of fight scenes where you've got the sort of tactical combat with mercenaries versus military vets and CIA operatives.
Nice car chase in London as well.
A good car chase in London as well. And I have to say as well, because obviously we're a community radio station here in the city of Cambridge, they do have a few scenes at an RAF base here in the county of Cambridgeshire. So they also have one in Oxfordshire as well, but that's not important. But yeah, it does a lot of globe-trotting, but it's quite nice that a lot of that is spent in the UK in areas that I'm familiar with and we're all familiar with, and then sort of just leapfrogging between there and Dubai. It's exactly what you'd expect from a spy thriller, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I think the thing I noticed about it was that it's funded by Skydance, so it's getting that Chinese money, and I'm sort of wondering as I was watching it, is that why this feels so divorced from any sort of real world issues? Because the motivations of the villain, I mean, it's Max Beasley putting in a thoroughly evil British performance, but his motivations are so murky and unrelatable that I was just struggling to really see him as an actual villain that could exist in the real world. I don't know how. Did you feel there was any sort of political parallels with reality?
I could only sort of agree to the sentiment that it is just about divorced enough from reality based on vague approximations of real world events. So it's sort of vaguely believable. But yeah, I think you're right. I think some of it is a little bit too far-fetched, just a little too but then it is just spy fiction.
They're very desperate for there not to be anything that you could put onto a real world parallel here, and especially sort of the big speeches at the end of, oh no, but we're the good guys with the spears. We're not the bad guys.
I think something to also note is, apart from John Krasinski being the leading man of this, is that similar to A Quiet Place, which I think was his big breakout of seeing him as, a macho kind of leading man taken away from Jim from The Office, is that he did executive produce this and he did write the script for, I think, a lot of the film. It just seems to be like a passion project that has come from, 2023 was when it concluded. Essentially, that's such a long lull to see Tom Clancy still in the background, obviously. It's such a long lull for a film to come from a series. Do you think that this is like the start of, him coming back into the role and being like, oh, we can make more films from this? Or is this kind of like the end of the series as a payout?
It definitely, without wanting to give too much away, it definitely sets up that he's back in and he's not going anywhere. So there's definitely more Jack Ryan that could come. I just wonder when they're going to finally let poor Tom Clancy rest in peace.
Well, I think Tom Clancy's written a lot of stuff, hasn't he? So I think there'll plenty of source material to draw from. So I would welcome more of John Krasinski as Jack Ryan.
Yeah, it's interesting that Jack Ryan, the character, has been played by such massive stars over the years, such as Alec Baldwin, Harrison Ford, Ben Affleck, Chris Pine, of course, in the Hollywood movies. But yeah, John Krasinski, per hours played, he is Jack Ryan.
Yeah,
he definitely gets the cerebral bit down as well as the action.
He comes across as quite a smart guy. Like when he's doing the sort of finance talking at the start, like you believe him as a, he just wants to have a nice, cool Wall Street job.
It's just a little bit up there with the accountant almost in that regard.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
and then along comes Wendell Pierce.
And their relationship is always fun. There's always fun.
100%.
There's just so many names you have to keep track of, and they're talking about Spear and Crown and Greer, and I was like, oh, who's that again? But then I guess I haven't watched the show, so I can't complain too much.
Jack Ryan is a Certificate 15 and is now streaming on Amazon.
So next up, we are doing our final cinema release of the week, which is another horror movie. Passenger follows a young couple on a road trip who witness a horrific roadside accident, only to realise they haven't fully left it behind. A relentless supernatural presence begins stalking them across the open road, turning their journey into an escalating fight for survival. Here's a trailer.
I saw these on the car last night. 3 scratches just like that.
You didn't stop, did you? It's something unholy.
Someone's following us.
Saint Christopher, protect me today. All my travels. Give us your warning signs if danger is near.
Okay, so Vicky, you and I had the pleasure of sitting through this last night. So essentially, the inciting incident is them witnessing this horrible car accident and stopping to try and render assistance. So did you think there was anything to that? Was it about guilt and consequences of our actions, or was it just a supernatural chase film?
So I was expecting it to have a bit more dynamicism. I think, like I said, we're on the kind of horror run of the summer, which I'm very much appreciating. And so much, I was so shook up from Obsession, I did plead for your company to watch this with, as I think my nerves have been a little bit shot.
It's quite jumpy, this, isn't it?
Exactly. And so I'm very appreciative of just generally being in a room with other people while watching this, which was not the same exactly for Hokum. In saying so, I think I went the first 10 minutes, I was like, okay, maybe this isn't on the same level as everything else we've seen. And it's not to say that this is. However, I think the main couple throughout this, essentially, you've got a young couple who are giving up their life in Brooklyn. You know, they have successful careers and they've, you know...
We never really see why they want to live this van life, though.
There's kind of like hints, you know, he's kind of like, he's done with his job, and they've been inspired by a YouTuber that they followed, and they just want to live life on the road and, you know, take every day as it comes, and to live this kind of van life traveling through the States as a permanent solution. And so you have their kind of camper van that is maybe the one place setting, which does always make a horror film a little bit more scarier. But what was so nice is that they are a believable couple, and
they had nice chemistry.
They had really lovely chemistry. Nothing was silly. There was no silly mistakes in the way that this played out. So the main character, Lula Bell, playing Maddie Brecker, essentially she is the first to kind of notice that the passenger has attached himself from the accident onto their kind of camper van, onto their life. And as they stop at the meetup and she gets to know a little bit more about the laws of the road, about the hobo code, you can tell that there's a lot of research being done into this. I personally never had a long form road trip, but I can imagine that there's a lot of rules and regulations that people should follow to keep that, you know, to keep that going. And to find out about it, I got very interested. I also always wear a Saint Christopher, so to know that patron saint of travel can keep me very much safe, especially away from a demonic presence, is pretty good to know.
And if you ever do need to know what's chasing you, you can always track down Melissa Leo to provide some much needed exposition. One thing I found was slightly strange about this film is that, there's 2 trailers for it. There's the one that we've played just now, but the trailer that first sort of was doing the rounds was essentially the opening 10 minutes of the film condensed into 2-minute trailer film. And I was kind of a little bit worried seeing that, because you sort of think, well, you're kind of admitting that this is the peak horror of the film, and you're giving the whole thing away in the trailer. So did you think that there were enough of the sort of set piece scares to maintain interest here? Or?
I think there's one specific I feel, yes, a lot was given away in the trailer, and I do hold grudges where there's too much narrative being shown, especially for horror films, in a trailer. But I do think you didn't get to know the original characters, and there's a specific scene that is set in the woods. You know, they've had this out on the roads outdoor movie night, and I think there's a lot to be told there, because I've definitely watched films in a kind of like backyard setting, and there's a real life context of just knowing that there's something watching you. I don't think they gave too much away, especially not about the main characters, but I I kind of wanted a bit more jumps actually, rather than what we did get, which was a dash cam footage that was coming towards you.
I think for me, it always undermines the horror a little bit when you know that the ghostly presence is just kind of going to be messing with them for the first hour, and that it's not going to actually try and hurt them until like the final kind of scare sequence, which for me felt quite isolated from some of the quite grounded stuff that had gone before. But yeah, I would agree that sequence in the forest when they're watching Roman Holiday on projector, and she's using the projector as a light source, as a torch almost, to look into the forest, and we're sort of seeing the giant faces of the actors within the film being projected amongst the trees, and we the audience are looking out for the telltale sign of the passenger standing somewhere. He does a good line in standing ominously.
100%. It's always great when the second half of the partner in this one finally realizes that his fiancée is not crazy and that there is a passenger following them, and there is some like levity in knowing that they're joining forces rather than her being on her own and him being just naive and getting potentially killed. They kind of become this kind of super pairing against the passenger, to which I really, like I said, I thought they were such a dynamic and enjoyable couple to watch that didn't make any mistakes, that it was very clever, and there's a lot of nice traditional lore behind it.
And I liked their relationship, that you didn't have that sort of typical thing of the partner who hasn't witnessed the horror thinking the other one's crazy. Like, he very much was on board with helping her from the start. So yeah, I just have to say I didn't really like this. I think I was umming and ahhing between 2 or 2.5 stars, and I think it didn't really feel like it was about something for me. Like, I prefer a horror like Obsession that really felt like it had parallels to reality. This kind of felt like, whilst the central couple were quite relatable and interesting, the passenger himself wasn't necessarily that interesting to me.
But I think,
what did you give it in the end?
I think I went for 3 stars because I did enjoy, like I said, I liked the research that was done behind it. But I think what's happened, Matt, is actually we've just been a bit spoilt recently.
We have been spoilt. We just watched Obsession.
We've just watched Obsession. We have the Backrooms, Hokum. We have the Backrooms coming out. I think we're just in this kind of pool of horror directors and funding and creativity going into this genre so much that maybe this wasn't as great or as what we've had. But in later 2000s, maybe 2010s, really, this is all you were getting. You were just getting a kind of basic horror film. But now it's really showing that when this comes out and doesn't quite deliver, you know that the genre's kind of back, because we've watched so much quality horror and jump scares that although I did need someone to watch this with, I could feel like I'm now settled back into being okay to watch horror alone.
The thing with the jump, I don't want to say I wasn't kind of unnerved and shocked by this, but it felt like the jump scares are what I know Mark Kermode calls it cattle prod cinema, like when it's quiet, and you know the passenger's going to appear and he's going to be right next to the camera and there's going to be a sting, but it didn't feel like it was doing anything psychological